Abhishek, great to have you in the studio with us today. You founded Material Security in 2017, and before that, you were with Dropbox and Microsoft, and you have your MBA from Harvard Business School, and you have a bachelor's degree from Princeton on electronic engineering. I'm excited to hear your approach to the data cloud platform and security from your various experience.
Yeah, very excited to be here. Thank you.
Tell us more about Material Security.
So Material Security is a security company, obviously, as the name implies, that is focused on protecting the productivity suite. So Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace. We actually got our start by focusing on email security back in 2017. As you said, we got started after the election cycle at the time, where there were some very high-profile email attacks. So that's where the company got started. These days, we do a little bit more than email security. And like I said, focus on the broader productivity suite, being Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace, which tends to be kind of critical infrastructure at most companies because it's where all their people, content, communication live. So we help secure that.
What are some organizations that are using your product, and what are their key challenges?
Yeah. We serve kind of companies of all shapes and sizes. So largest customers are in the hundreds of thousands of employees. So companies like Mars. And on the other hand, smallest customers can be in the hundreds of employees. And then everything in the middle, brand name tech companies like DoorDash, Lyft, and others are customers, as well as, kind of more folks in the traditional kind of Fortune 500, things like MassMutual. Pretty large range of customers. And the reason for that large range is actually because everything that we do is API based. So the integration is really simple, which means that we can serve a very large range of customers without having to worry about the kind of lift that entails normally.
Sweet. Can we see a demo of it?
Yeah, I'd love to show you. I always like to start actually with just talking about how easy it is to even get started with Material. So every single one of our customers gets a single tenant instance, which is a big part of the Snowflake story as well, as we'll get into later. But as a security product, it's really important that data privacy is sort of prominent in our product. And so every single customer gets a single tenant instance, and they get started by simply enrolling a Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace tenant, and it's all via API, like I was saying. So it's as simple as kind of enrolling here, you get an API grant request, and then you're off and running with Material. So that's the first thing that I just wanted to highlight. It's very, very, very easy to get started. Once we are started, what Material starts doing is it actually starts using the APIs of those native platforms, whether it's Microsoft or Google, to start really interrogating the instance for all sorts of things. We start syncing content, communication, we start syncing settings, we form a structured model of basically your entire environment. And the very first thing that we do, back to your question about challenges that we help solve for companies, is we start creating lots and lots of what we call risk reports. So these reports basically help security teams answer questions that you would think are very easy to answer, but are actually very difficult to answer about their environment. So everything like which accounts might not have MFA enabled, which accounts have MFA bypasses, things like is there a Google account that has set up auto forwarding of all corporate mail out of the environment? Or even if someone is doing manual forwarding of work email to personal accounts. So these are, like I said, difficult questions about the posture of their environments, the security posture that we help assess in a very, very short amount of time. And all of this is being powered under the hood by this data platform that we have started syncing content and communication into. We're essentially running queries all the time on this type of content.
And those reports are all out of box, come with Material.
That's right. They all come out of the box and they start populating instantly as soon as you start integrating those tenants that I mentioned. These reports are very simple things like what I've been showing, but they can be very complex things as well. So one of the things that we do, for example, is we look for sensitive content that is sitting inside archives of mailboxes. One of the biggest things that is really hard to protect in data breaches is unstructured data.
Can you give an example of like sensitive unstructured data you're protecting here?
Yeah, absolutely. So, think about your own email for a second. You've got financial transactions, you've got PII, personal data, you've got invoices, you've probably, got all sorts of different sensitive communication. And there have been over and over many, many data breaches where that's the target that attackers are after because it's so sensitive, whether for monetization purposes, whether for reputational harm. So it's a really important piece of crown jewel that typically is very hard to even get visibility into. So the first thing that we're doing is simply helping you understand what sensitive content exists. And the kind of list goes on and on. We can actually start using email data to infer all sorts of things about the environment. So for example, let's say you were a CISO and you just want to understand which applications are being used in your company. Well, historically, what you would do is try to put something that's examining your network traffic. You can't do that anymore because everyone's working from home. You might try to have everyone use the same browser, but you can't do that anymore because people are accessing things from their phone, they're signing up for services. The one thing that is common, though, is email. Every application on the internet, when you sign up for it or do something, it emails you. So if you can start understanding this data set and process it, you can actually answer questions like what apps are being used inside my company. We get all of this visibility, and that really is the first step because it now helps understand what are the risks that exist and tries to give you very actionable recommendations on what to do about certain types of risk.
Is that a recommendation powered by certain kind of like machine learning models or like a rule-based? What is the secret source behind the scene for that?
Yeah, it really depends on the type of risk. Certain times it's as simple as, hey, you have this door open, please close it. So like there's a setting that you may have left unconfigured. Other times, you're right, it's a little bit more sophisticated. Like, we're noticing this behavior, so we might recommend that you enable a certain configuration that you didn't have. But let me show you where this gets really, really interesting. So I have all this sensitive content in a mailbox. And just to put that into perspective, I mentioned we started the company out of the election hacks in 2016. We probably all remember it was like the Hillary campaign chairman. He had all his email hacked, put on the internet, and the internet had a sort of a field day. Yep. This kind of similar thing happened with Sony Pictures, with HBO. Basically, email ends up being this really, really important data set. What we can start doing is actually not just give you visibility into this risk, but actually start doing something about it. And that's where material goes kind of beyond visibility and actually starts helping you mitigate some of these risks. What I want to show you is how we actually protect this sensitive content inside a mailbox, because it's one thing to get the visibility. It's an entirely different thing to actually do something about it. And so you'll notice in this inbox, which is just a regular Gmail account, it could be an Outlook account, that there's a bunch of messages, but some of them have this fancy sensitive message on them.
Do I have to tag those myself?
You don't have to tag it on your own. Material goes and classifies this content for you. Users can also tag on their own, but they hardly ever do.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah. But yeah, so material goes back historically through the entire mailbox, and it'll look for things that it thinks are sensitive. And as I mentioned earlier, this could be financial documents, it could be personal information, it could be healthcare related, whatever we think is sensitive. But once we find something that is sensitive, what happens is material actually does something really interesting, which is that it can redact that message entirely out of the mailbox. And the threat model that we're worried about here is if an attacker was to access my account somehow, maybe they compromised MFA, maybe they got through with a malicious Chrome extension or an OAuth application. There are various ways into an account, and a lot of the recent breaches show that nation-state actors in particular will get through. But once someone is through, what they're after is the actual contents inside the email.
So this is an additional door to protect those information.
That's right. It's kind of a defense in depth mechanism. And so what's happened here is I've accessed the account as the bad guy, but I haven't actually gotten access to this message. But we all kind of hoard email for a reason, right? We might need it for our jobs. We might need to access some old message. So material doesn't remove the ability to access this message. It just makes you challenge and prove that it's actually you before you can access it. And to do that, we leverage whatever identity provider a company is already using. So I'm just going to show you how that works. If I click retrieve message here, what's going to happen is material is actually integrated in this case with Okta, and it is prompting me to prove that I'm actually me trying to retrieve this message. So I'm going to do that for a second. And so I just got the Okta push on my phone. I'm going to approve it. Now, if I had said no, this is an incredible signal for a security team. It means someone's in my account trying to retrieve a message that wasn't me. It's an immediate signal that they can leverage. But
there are going to be notifications sent to them.
Yes. But in this case, I said yes, and you can see the whole message is back. And that is really the kind of beauty of one of Material's defense in depth protections, which is you don't have to keep all of these sensitive messages inside a mailbox accessible to an adversary, but you can still let users access them when they need to.
It's super powerful.
And this is, just one of the different capabilities that gets unlocked when you can have this kind of rich API access to environments. The other thing I want to show you, though, is something that is kind of more traditional email security, right? And so when people think about email security, one of the things they really have to worry about is very sophisticated inbound attacks like phishing, like BEC, like social engineering. So another thing that Material does is it just looks for these kinds of attacks because it's constantly syncing all content that's arriving inside a mailbox, and it's able to flag things that may have gotten past a traditional defense. Here you can see kind of some examples of attacks that Material has discovered. And if I click into some of them, you can see there's a bunch of tools that analysts at a security team would use. So, things like they can examine kind of the headers, they can examine which message was actually flagged, why we thought it was bad. And we'll even look for things like similar messages to this mailbox across the entire environment that may have also gotten through. So
And it is for the whole company's mailbox database.
This is for the whole company, because one of the things that often happens is one user might report a message, for example, and then you have a security team member who has to listen to that report, look for anything else similar that someone else may have gotten but not reported. Material will automate a lot of those actions. It'll also proactively find things that are very sophisticated that get through traditional defenses.
Very powerful.
The last thing I'll show you is something that's actually very, very straightforward. Imagine you're a security team or an IT team. A message has come into your environment. Maybe it's someone that accidentally shared something to the whole company that they weren't supposed to, and you get this urgent request, which is like, hey, can you please just delete this message from everyone? Shockingly, doing that using the native tools in Google or Microsoft would be really, really hard. In Material, it's as simple as coming to our search and actually just going ahead and typing whatever search you want using a variety of search operators, just doing kind of what you would expect in any kind of search. So let me just show you how this works. And this is a real-time search across your entire email environment. Now, you have to have the right roles in our product, obviously, to do that. But for any type of threat investigations, for any type of HR requests or forensics, this becomes an incredibly important incident response tool. I'll just take a second to highlight how everything we've been doing is actually powered by Snowflake. By this point, it's probably pretty clear that a lot of how Material works is leveraging data from the cloud office, whether that's Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace. And as I mentioned in the beginning, we're syncing all of these logs. Where are we syncing them to? We need a place that is going to be very fast to query, that is going to be economical to query, and where we can create both structured and unstructured data and handle it in a graceful way. So you probably see where I'm going with this. That's Snowflake for us, right? And so customers can actually deploy Material in such a fashion that everything, all of the data we're syncing is in their Snowflake instance.
So you're talking about the connected model.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So in Material here, I'll just go and show you in this environment. I've actually got an integration with Snowflake, and Snowflake is acting as the data platform for the whole app. So everything in Material is being powered by Snowflake. If I jump over here really quickly to an actual Snowflake UI, that search query that we just ran a few minutes ago, that's right here. It's just different queries that are actually in Snowflake. So we're literally, when you go run a search query in Material, we're literally compiling it into a Snowflake query and running it on the Snowflake data platform.
And it's running on your customer's Snowflake account.
Yes, that's exactly right. The sort of benefit of this is that all of those risk reports, all of the phishing case analysis that I talked about, the search queries, everything is powered at the end of the day with an analytics query against a data set. And all of that runs inside Snowflake. So you can kind of keep all of the data in your own Snowflake instance, but your security team can also go into that Snowflake instance and now leverage that data set for your own purposes.
And they're accessing through Snowside or through Material?
They can access either way. So, through Material, obviously they would be consuming it through our UI, through our search functionality. In Snowflake, they would be literally looking at the tables directly and being able to write their own queries against it.
Got it, makes sense.
And if you just think about the value of this data for a second, in security in particular, there's a lot of focus on kind of your network data, your identity data, your endpoint data, things like antivirus or detection and response that's running on your computer. But cloud office data, meaning data from your productivity suite, has been missing. It's really, really hard to deal with that. And the reason is because the volumes are so high. If I said to you, hey, put every single email that your organization gets into a traditional security data platform, it would be a non-starter. It's so expensive, and it also is unstructured, so the traditional platforms can't deal with it. With something like Snowflake, that changes. Now you can actually put all this volume of data in there and start doing a bunch of security analysis on top of it.
So you're talking about the security data lake.
That's exactly right, yeah. And many of our customers are either already adopting a security data lake, and this becomes a really valuable data set that they want to add to it, or this becomes the way that they are starting a security data lake initiative because they're starting it off with incredibly important data set that is part of their security posture.
Love it.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for showing this, Abhishek. I think it's so powerful to see how Material not only provide the insight, but also provide all this very actionable behavior for the end user so they can kind of like adding this one layer for their security information with just like a one click.
Yeah.
This is really wonderful. So I really want to switch gear a bit to understand, how this like started from day one, like why like even like founded Material.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, it got really started because we were a bunch of data folks that discovered security. Honestly, probably a lot of your guests are security folks who discovered data. We were the other way around. I was at Dropbox, and my two co-founders were also at Dropbox, and we were in the data infrastructure group. So we were actually there in the pre-Snowflake days, when you have things like Hadoop and you have to run these really giant clusters, and no one wants to do that ever again. But anyway, so we were at Dropbox, and our backgrounds were in large data sets. That was kind of what we knew. That was our bread and butter. In 2016, when the election hacks happened, it kind of just drew our attention to email security, which I think, like many people, we thought was a solved problem. We didn't really think about email security as this like big burning need. Those hacks really showed that this was like a really important data set that still doesn't have kind of the right controls on it. The other thing was that at the time, which sounds obvious now, people were just starting to move email to the cloud. So large organizations like the Fortune 500 were actually adopting Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace, which meant that email was moving from something on-premise to something in the cloud. Yeah. And when that happens, you get APIs. So it was kind of two things together. It was the fact that these hacks showed us that there was still a lot of opportunity to do something about the problem, and also the move to cloud, which came with APIs, created a lot of opportunities to build new capabilities that just weren't possible before.
So how did you heard about Snowflake? I know we talk about the security data lake, but any other key features actually bring Snowflake to you that we haven't covered?
We heard about Snowflake, like I said, I come from a data background, so we were following Snowflake from the early days, when a lot of the kind of columnar storage databases were just getting started. And like I said, as someone who literally had to deal with like Hadoop, things like Snowflake were like a huge blessing.
MapReduce war, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So when it came to this company, though, we knew from the beginning that to build what we wanted to build, there would be a really, really strong data component. You simply can't do most of what I've showed today unless you're willing to sync and process a large amount of data. And so picking a data platform was important from day one. One thing that I will say about Snowflake is ultimately it comes down to what customers want to use, right? So if customers are starting to adopt Snowflake and that's where they want to keep their data, then they've almost made the choice for us, right? And then you add to that the fact that you need to process this data that is very large, but you also need to do it in an economical way as a startup. The choices kind of start narrowing very quickly. And so that's what brought us to Snowflake.
It's great to hear. Any of our upcoming features that you're excited about?
Yeah, so I think, we ingest a lot of data into Snowflake. And so we're always excited about new ways of doing that. Our teams are collaborating a ton on some of the Kafka connectors that might make that scale up even more. But on top of that, I'm also really excited about some of the kind of AI and machine learning capabilities that Snowflake is releasing, because we're just really excited about what that unlocks for our customers using Material and Snowflake together. Because if you think about it, for the first time with Material, they have all of this productivity suite data available inside Snowflake. And now they can use that data for use cases way beyond security. And especially if they can apply machine learning on that in their own sort of data platform, the sort of possibilities are endless. So we're really excited about that.
You already have the data, drive more insight, activate the data, action-driven, right?
Yeah, the way I think about it is if someone wanted to start from scratch and use machine learning on top of their productivity suite data, they would, first have to stand up a big cluster, sync everything, make sure it never goes down, make sure it's real time, then put it into a data platform like Snowflake, and then get started. we kind of let them skip a few steps and get going immediately.
Totally excited about that. So what's next for you? Like what your customers should be excited about for the next 6 months to a year?
Yeah, so we're really excited about continuing to broaden beyond email. Like I said, email is where we started. Email tends to be a very hot zone in terms of attacks in particular. But it really isn't comprehensive of everything people have to worry about with the productivity suite. The productivity suite is something that we think hasn't always gotten enough attention. So we want to be a company that is really focused on protecting the entire productivity suite. What that means is you go beyond email to things like files, to things like chat, to things like thinking about posture across all of these applications.
You're gonna start to tag all my Slack messages, right?
That's right. Yeah. So I think emails where we got started. We're already doing things beyond that, but we're launching kind of support for Google Drive soon. We're gonna do more things with OneDrive later in the year, and so really just branching out of the email application is something that we're excited about. But with the same approach, right? You can keep taking more and more of this data, put it in a data platform, and make it useful for security teams.
So for people who want to learn more about Material, where should they get started?
They should just head to our website, material.security. And I take pride in the fact that our website tends to actually describe what our product does instead of a ton of marketing jargon. So it tends to be better than most data sheets of companies. And that's a great place to start.
Thanks so much for joining us today, Abhishek. We appreciate your time, your insight, and your vision on this.
Absolutely. It was great being here. Thank you.
To learn more about companies are building top of Snowflake, go to developers.snowflake.com. And be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.